and welcome back to We Talk Talent, our highly popular interview series where we uncover strategies and solutions driving the future of talent, HR innovations, and leadership. I'm Avik Roy, Associate Content and Community from ETHRWorld, and it's my pleasure to introduce the guest of our today's episode, Ranjan Banerjee, CHRO from Berger Paints. Hi Ranjan, we are so glad to have you here. Welcome to We Talk Talent.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be there.
Great. So I'll start with my first question. When you look at the paints and manufacturing industry today, what are the top workforce shifts that are fundamentally reshaping how organizations operate?
So before you look at workforce shifts, I think it's important to look at how the industry is shifting and what the priorities are going to be. So if you look at the industry, normally the paint industry grows at around 1.4 to 1.8 times of the GDP, right? So the more infrastructure investment happens, the more the paint industry grows. That's one. In the paints business, the construction chemicals sector, the construction chemicals vertical is going to grow very rapidly. Okay, so that's going to be one big area of growth. The other thing that you find is that every company, and at least Berger Paints, if you look at it, we are planning or targeting to double our turnover by 2029, 2030. Which means it has certain implications on people and HR. So the implication here is that you will have to build a structured talent pipeline. You will have to build talent from within. You will have to build source from outside, grow within, right? Source youngsters and freshers from outside, grow them within. So these are some of the challenges, some of the workforce shifts which are coming in. The other thing which is also going to happen is there's going to be a huge amount of acceleration required on succession to critical roles. Okay, so there are certain critical roles which are very high business impacting roles. You need to have at least 1 to 2 successors who are either ready now or maybe ready in the next 1 to 3 years time frame. So that is the other imperative that comes in. The second part is, if you look at the paint business, you have new players coming in now, right? So there is going to be jockeying for talent, and there is going to be a war for talent, and that I think is something that you get to see everywhere in every part of the economy. Now, particularly so with paint business, and therefore enhancing employee experience, enhancing capability building and capability development will be a huge imperative. The third is that with competition growing and competitors resorting to price wars, which usually they do across industry, if you see, there will be a pressure on the margins. And if there is a pressure on the margins, that means per employee productivity will be a key concern. And therefore, the organizations will start looking at ways and means of enhancing productivity of an employee, giving them larger roles, assigning greater targets and growth volumes, as at the same time building capability in a very, very detailed out fashion. So these are some of the workforce shifts that I see vis-a-vis the industry trends that are coming in.
You also mentioned about capability building, that has to be another top priority. And that's my next question. Given that now the only way to address skill shortages, continuous learning, capability building, what are some of the key learning interventions that are happening right now at Berger to keep its workforce, future ready?
So one is the sourcing strategy. So where do you source from? We are sourcing people from tier 3, tier 4 management institutes. We partner them in running a Berger paint management program, which would have a 1-year duration. And those who put their hands up for that program And if they go through that entire program, which is quite a rigorous one, which has classroom as well as on the job, and those who qualify the assessment, which is again very rigorous, then they get a job offer. So that's one. So you see, so you get ready-made talent to come in at the junior most level, at the entry level, and that's what we are focusing on. The second is in terms of capability building. So capability building will be in two tranches. One is functional technical capability building, right? So what does your sales frontline guy need to know to pitch a product, to convert a contractor, to set up shop, to open new dealers? So what is the kind of pitch that he or she needs to make? And therefore, what kind of capability building modules that you're preparing within the organization? So all of this is digitalized in our organization. So a Salesforce, a frontline sales colleague of mine would be able to just tap his mobile, see the video once again before he goes for the pitch. Right. So that's how we are organizing the capability. So one is the functional part. So there's a detailed business vertical wise, role wise skill analysis done, and therefore what kind of inputs do we need to give them. So that is all detailed out, and that is all digitalized also in digital modules. So you can go through them at your pace. The second is leadership development. Now that includes rotation on the job. Yeah, rotation, giving them varied exposure across geography, across roles, across business verticals, right? So that's first part. The second is in terms of potential assessment. So performance is something which is of the past. Performance gives you a record of the past. Potential tells you how, based on their record of performance over the past and behaviors you've observed, how do you rate the person in terms of potential to move to a higher order role or to a parallel role, lateral shift in the organization. So that's the larger part, and therefore that is where we give them leadership behavioral inputs, leadership development inputs, and that too is both classroom as well as offline and online. So to revise and to continually keep practicing that, we have a host of leadership training modules which we have posted on our website, and there's a lot of traction there. So there's continuous learning. So one is the sourcing part, and the other is the learning and capability building part. So both of these are taken care of.
That's a great response. Thank you for that. Yeah, now I'm going to move to my next question, and then that's on Berger's very iconic culture. It's culture legacy that has been has stood the test of time. I want to know from you, what does it really take to build a culture like that? Those key things that every organization must get it right to build a culture of that strength.
So you see, when you talk of culture, again, it has a very clear connection with what you deliver to the consumer or what you deliver to the customer in the market. Okay, culture is seen in terms of behaviors demonstrated by employees while they're interacting with each other and interacting at the market with the customer. And that's the source point of culture. Culture is not something which is nice to do. So it has to have relevance vis-a-vis the business, the nature of your business. If you look at Berger's growth trajectory over the past 15 years, we've grown at around 15 to 17% CAGR, right? And we are the second largest player in India. The largest player in India has also grown at around 14, 15% CAGR over the past 15 years. So the question that comes in everybody's mind is, how is it that the second largest player, which is 1/3 the size of the largest player, is maintaining the same rate of growth? So there must be something. So what is it? So what really is part of the DNA of Berger is, one, we allow a lot of experimentation and autonomy and empowerment to our employees, right? So they get to test out new products, they get to test out new ideas, they get to experiment with new ideas. There's a lot of empowerment. We are not a very bureaucratic organization, right? Hierarchical organization. And what fosters this spirit of innovation? And a very accessible management team, a very accessible leadership team. So you can walk into the MD's office, you can walk into the HOD's office, you can walk into the function head's office and share your views. So there's nothing stopping you from doing that, right? So the power distance between the leadership of the company and the rest of the organization is very low, right? Which becomes a problem in many other places where the power distance is very high. Okay, so therefore, access to leadership. The second is we also have a very humble and compassionate leadership team, which again promotes the ability of employees across the board to come in and share their thoughts and share their views, right? So these two pillars actually promote a culture of empowerment and autonomy and innovation. So that's the overall cultures, and that's how we present ourselves to the market at large, right? To our customers. So they find it easier to talk to us. They find it easier to access us. They find us more forthcoming. They find us coming up with a lot of innovative products and innovative ways in which you apply your products, right? So that is what the culture, and that's how culture is a bridge between people and business results.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. Now, with changes happening so fast in the workplace, resilience and agility has become very important. And that can only have, any organization can only have those values when the right talent is there. So, a healthy talent pipeline is very essential for the immediate needs as well as for future needs as well. Um, at Berger, what are some strategies you're leveraging to help sustain a healthy talent pipeline, both for immediate needs as well as, long-term goals?
So you've already heard. I spoke a little while ago about our sourcing strategy and how we get in fresh talent in and groom them within their institutes, and
Yes.
then they're ready to plug and play in the organization. So that's one. Second is the kind of capability building that we are having continuously, and it's a continuous process. The third is the succession planning and talent review process, where the MD, CEO, and the functional heads, they converge every year, once every year, to discuss about 200, 250 top talent of the company, right? And see fitment vis-a-vis on 100 plus critical roles in this organization. So that's a very big process that we undertake every year. And at the function level, we have a meeting between HR and the business function head every quarter. So once a quarter, review with the functions. Once a year, annual review with the managing director, chairing that. So that's a big thing. And that's done religiously, and that's the basis on which we plot people in the 9-box matrix and decide on their development journey. The second thing here is in terms of ensuring that we have successors in place, if not ready now, but at least 1 to 2 years and 3 to 5 years. That's a long process, but the rigor, the kind of intensity that comes into this entire initiative, entire agenda is what makes a difference, and how seriously you take it. Because if an HOD does not have a successor identified, then at least in the 1 to 3 year time frame, then the HOD is called to question, and his performance rating for the year does take a beating. Similarly, we have introduced this for people across the line sitting in critical roles. If you haven't developed or identified your successor, which is approved by the Central Talent Review Council, then you will take a beating as far as your performance rating is concerned. So, which means developing teams and successes is a critical part of your performance KRAs for the year. And it has a 20% weightage at middle level and a 30% weightage at senior levels. So it's taken very seriously.
Any outcomes like lately this year, maybe last year, like how many successors were able to be identified or something?
So there's a huge improvement in the ready now category across organization, across functions. It's moved by around 7 percentage points over last year and this year. In the 1 to 3 year ready category, things have moved to almost around 25%, by 25% from what it used to be. I'm not sharing the actual numbers because that is something which is very, needs to be kept close to the organization. It's a strategic view, but that's the kind of improvement we've had. So it's quite an improvement, but we have miles to go.
Wonderful. Just I would like to know your take. I keep hearing about this fact that some like HR leaders are pointing out that with AI, middle management layer may go away, managers may shrink away. What's your take? Is that what's going to happen, or managers will be needed more to help employees? Like you said,
I don't think. See, some jobs which are routine, repetitive, will go out.
Okay.
Jobs which require judgment will continue to stay. Jobs which are niche skill, they will continue to be there. And middle management will remain because you will need bench strength for succession into the leadership roles. Where will they come from? You don't have them. And translating the organization's strategy to the last mile and helping them execute is the job of the middle management. It depends on how you envision your roles. If you envision your roles as messengers, then your roles will be gone. If you envisage your roles as translators of the strategy and vision of the company to the last mile and helping people execute, then those jobs will remain.
That's very insightful. Thank you for sharing that take. One last question for you. Where are you seeing most practical impact of AI or digital tools in HR today? And what guides your decision making when it comes to selecting the right AI tools?
AI is helping HR get better in its game. In terms of what's the role of HR is not just building capability and bringing about change and managing leadership transition, building succession. That's one part. The second part of the role of HR is also to be able to envision what's going to happen 5 years, 7 years, 8 years hence in terms of workforce demographics, in terms of workforce psychographics, in terms of how the kind of products the customers may look for, the kind of services the customer may look forward to tomorrow or day after. That is the kind of envisioning that HR should be able to do. And plus, you'll get a lot of analytics, which will keep coming online, real time. So real time, you'll know what's the mood of the organization, what's the requirement of capability in the organization, and how do you need to prepare. So it will help HR up the game.
Thank you so much, Ranjan, for joining We Talk Talent. It has been a great pleasure interacting with you and learning so much. The insights you shared was so, such magnified view of what's actually happening on the ground. Thank you so much for that. Thanks again for joining We Talk Talent.